unpopular opinion, but like the idea of, start with toxic masculinity and then just go from there, right? Like it's just a disaster. And so when I have a man come into my office, the first thought truly is like the significant privilege that it is that he's willing to even come in and sit with me, right? Because as a female, like I have the ability to shame him and humiliate him more than any other man can possibly do, right? And like women are the ones who tear men down more than men ever do, in my opinion. And so if I can provide safety, like true emotional safety for a male coming in, I think that is the most powerful experience, right? And so when they come in to see me, I tell them that right off the bat. You don't need to trust me. You don't know me from a hole in the ground. I'm just like some random chick. Also, like, there's a power imbalance here. And we want to get rid of that power imbalance because that can be really scary. So this is me. You can ask me whatever you want. If it crosses a boundary, I'll tell you it crosses a boundary, but like, let's just have a conversation. And you don't have to trust me, right? Like you don't know me, you don't have to trust me. And so like, let's build the trust, let's build the relationship. And it is the greatest privilege for me as a female to sit here and hear your story, right? And it is something every man, that's an exaggeration. I would say 95% of the men who have walked into my office, that has been a profound moment for them because they've never had a woman sit down and have that conversation with them.
That's interesting.
Right?
That's fascinating.
Because it's terrifying.
Yeah.
Because here is this woman who, first of all, I'm coming to her for help, right? Because I need something. But also, most of the women in my life have hurt me or harmed me or shamed me or humiliated me or told me that I'm a failure or I'm a fuck up or I'm not good enough. And so my deepest desire for men truly is that they would actually experience a new level of emotional safety so they can actually be the men that they desire to be.
I love that.
Right? That's the purpose. Right? And it is when somebody comes to me for therapy and, you know, we work through their trauma, we work through healing, and they come out this other side as this person that they want to be, that they've desired to be, and they don't need to come anymore, that is the biggest moment of celebration. Because they have the tools, they feel safe, they feel strong, and they feel competent, and they feel like they can be vulnerable and that they are not going to lose their identity by being so.
Losing identity. Yeah, that one hits because yeah, there is this kind of moment where you're like, well, I've dealt with this by myself my whole life.
Right.
And then immediately you're including someone else. It's like, there's this feeling of, for lack of a better term or phrase, like you feel like you're selling out to yourself, to your identity. And so I like what you said there. Yeah, that's awesome.
Right? And if you sit, and I mean, I would imagine, I'm not a man, so I don't know, right? But I would imagine that it's significantly different. Like the two of you sitting down, looking at each other, being like, hey, I see you, I hear you, I value you. Versus, you know, Renz, you and I sitting here, and me going like, Renz, I see you, and I see your pain, and I see your history, and I see your hurt, and I see your vulnerability, and I see your courage to come and sit and have a meal and have no idea what's coming, and your willingness to show up. Right? I would imagine that it would hit different from a female versus a male.
Yeah. Absolutely. I would say a lot of my understanding of the world has been kind of passed on to me through my mother. And I often say this, anyone that knows me says like, the people in my life who made me who I am and continue to make me who I am are women. And so as I hold back tears from like even just what you've said there is like, that impact is huge. And for a lot of men, that's the same. Not for everybody has different experiences, but like for me specifically, like, yeah, I revere that because in my life, perhaps the men didn't know how. They never learned to connect and to talk about their feelings. And so it's an interesting thing becoming a father, wanting to teach these healthy frameworks to my son, while also still simultaneously addressing them in real time. But I also think that that's what inspires me to approach therapy, right? Is perhaps changing the narrative, breaking what's been the same for millennia. And I realize there's weight with that. But that's the point, is when you do walk up into a therapy session and finally say, you know what, I'm done carrying this by myself. I know for me, the first time I sat in therapy, and that was with my wife, I walked away from that. I'm like, that was easier than I thought. And perhaps it takes another person, another man to say, hey, it wasn't that bad. Trust the process, and yeah, you'll see results.
Well, I think about therapy, and yes, therapy, absolutely. But I also think about us even here, just sitting,
just this,
having a meal.
Yeah.
And when we fully engage and we have the conversation and we're willing to be vulnerable, I think that's really powerful, right? And earlier in the day, we were talking about how spiritual it can be to share a meal.
Oh man, yes.
Right? And how spiritual it can be for the three of us to show up and have a meal together and to talk and to create safety in the space, and the power that can come from having honest conversations.
Yeah.
In therapy, but also just outside of therapy, in community.
Yeah.
I was gonna say I love that piece, because when I think of myself and I think about the good parts about me that I truly believe, it was all words from people who I trusted the most. And it was their words. I was willing to trust a handful of individuals. They said things to me, and because the trust is so high, I chose to believe it. And I think that's part of the beauty of therapy too, when it's working on all cylinders, right? Because unfortunately, this might not be everyone's experience, but when it works really well, part of the magic is, and Julie, you've been a huge part of me developing in this direction, is that it's not so much that I have this beautiful framework, this beautiful pathway for you to walk, and when that trust is high, really amazing things can happen. But the technical term is the therapeutic relationship, right?
Yeah.
That's the term we're used to using. But when trust is high, magic can really happen. And part of what you're doing when you step into therapy is hoping to trust that therapist. And I love that piece that you said, Julie, earlier about, you don't have to trust me. Because paradoxically, it lets them actually, okay, I can lower my defenses, and then it actually ends up building trust in the long run, right? So, and then the honesty, the conversations, the reframing, all of the tools we use end up packing a punch because the trust is really high.
Right. Oh, I love that. Yeah, this idea of vulnerability is, I think, pretty difficult for people as well who, one of the questions earlier we were talking about is why is it so hard? Why is it so hard to make that step? We are talking about communing together, we're talking about therapy, but the aspect of actually finding someone that's good for your process is important, because the first therapist that I saw was absolute garbo. And
I hate that.
yeah, and it was so discouraging, because it took me a really long time, actually not until I got married again, but married. Whoa, that's not the truth that we were supposed to let out today. Yeah, so then it came back full circle. At first it was because I felt like I was doing something for my wife, right? I was being, it was so chivalrous and so noble. But then all I realized after was that this is actually a detriment to me to think that way, right? I'm doing this for me so I can be a better human for my wife and for my family, and also just to, my desire to be kind and just learn other people's stories. That's who I am.